All right. Well, thank you very much. I think I'm bringing up the rear here. It's nice talking after all these wonderful presentations because they've all covered specific things that I might have mentioned, and I don't have to, like the itchy wool clothes and sometimes the not so wonderful food. The title of my talk is Timing is Everything, from Antarctica to Greenland and Back. And it's actually Antarctica, Greenland, Antarctica, Greenland, Antarctica. But I've got photos here. Let's see. Right here, my first project, 1982 at South Pole. And I think, Julie, you were there that year. You said you were there 82, 83. That was my first field season. And then my last field season was in 2010 on the Bruce Plateau. So just to show you, well, first let's look at where I went. I have slides from every spot that I've been to except for 2 places. I didn't, let me turn around here. I didn't, oh my goodness, I'm busy. All right, from the, it's the old Camp Century. And now, then it was called Gits. I have no photos from there. And there's another one here that I don't have photos from. But anyway, let's forget that and go ahead. So I want to focus almost all of my attention in Antarctica, not only because of, that's the title here, we're all talking about Antarctica, but these were, in my estimation, with the exception of the Bruce Plateau, which was in the peninsula, these were the most interesting and pertinent to the things that we're talking about today. So I went from McMurdo down here to South Pole, up to Cycle Station, to Plateau Remote, and then I left Antarctica. I went up to Dive 3, and then I came, I don't know, I've hit one too many. Then I came back to South Pole to put in this accumulation network that Julie mentioned last night. And then I went back to GITS as part of a program called PARCA, which is the Program for Arctic Climate, Program for Arctic, I forgot. Program for Arctic Climate something. And I don't think the A is analysis, by the way. Where we actually drilled in 1996 at GITS. And then I can't read that from here. Let me look here. In 98, down here at, over here at Raven, which was the old I-2. And then, let's see. And then we went ahead to the next year. We did a sequence of cores, D1, D2, and D3. And I'll just show some photos from there. I'm not going to talk very much at all about these. And then ultimately, after time in Greenland, back over to Bruce Plateau in 2010. So that's the map. Those are the places we'll see. So I could tell you a little bit about my history, and everybody's done that. Mine wasn't as exciting as everybody else's. I studied physics. I went to graduate school in physics. It was 1970. Claire mentioned what 1970 was like. It wasn't a very pretty time, and I felt that physics wasn't going to be that interesting and wasn't going to offer much of a career. So I actually saw a flyer that said, "Are you interested in climate and weather? If so, come and study at Ohio State University in the atmospheric science program." So I came over, worked with John Rayner, same advisor as Claire. And then suddenly I realized, because I was in Derby Hall, I realized, oh, across the oval is the Institute of Polar Studies. Lonnie was already at the Institute of Polar Studies. And every Thursday, if people, some of the older folks remember, there was always a brown bag lunch. And I do mean a brown bag, like you brought your lunch in a brown bag. And people talked about like their last field project or whatever. Doc G always held forth a little bit. And I just got hooked with the Institute of Polar Studies. And so for my thesis, my dissertation, I analyzed studied the microparticles, which was about the only thing we were measuring at that time, in a core, a 101 meter core that had been drilled at South Pole Station a few years before, because just before they put up the dome, they decided that they would drill a core. And in fact, if you can't go there now because the dome's gone, but when you first walked into the dome, there was the dorm here, there was a pipe. It took me a few days there to figure out that pipe was actually the casing for the core that I had studied for my dissertation. So anyway, I finished up and stayed with the Institute, was just really enamored with the work, and kind of thought it was odd. Here I am, I'm analyzing ice core from South Pole. I've never been to Antarctica. In fact, I've never slept on ice. I've never really walked on ice other than icy sidewalks. I'm from West Virginia, so, you know, anyway, I got the opportunity in 1982 to join this group that you see here, and there were 10 of us. And the nice thing here is that we had 3 people from the Swiss group, Jakob Swander over here, right here, still in the business, and Bernard Stauffer, I have to point him out, he's right here. He's actually smiling. You don't see, Bernie didn't smile a lot, but he's smiling there. We had 3 Swiss scientists. We had 3 drillers from the Polar Ice Coring Office. And then these 2 folks that some of you will know, me and Pete Brutus, were really kind of representing the U.S. science team. And well, I'll get to that in a minute. So there we are standing at the ice runway, waiting for the flight to South Pole. As Julie mentioned, you know, hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. I don't even know if that time we got on the plane or not. Because you'd run down there and then you'd be delayed a day. So that's just a shot of the Transantarctic Mountains as we're going up to the polar plateau. This is the runway at South Pole. I think I can get that down. It'll be a lot easier. There's the runway at South Pole and the dome over here. And this was what South Pole looked like the day I arrived there for the first time. You get off the plane, you've just come from McMurdo, it's very cold. And if you haven't done polar work, it's absolutely shocking. It takes your breath away. Now, my first 2 from 1982 to 1986 were really, for me, kind of the transformative years in my work in Antarctica, because we were in the transition. This is why I said timing is everything. We were in the transition from the time when you, as a woman, weren't really all that welcome. I mean, they put up with you, but you really weren't all that welcome, to a time when women were leading field projects in the remote field. So I'll kind of walk you through those few years. So you get off here at South Pole, they'd take your orange bag and dump it out, and they'd go about their business, and all the passengers who've just come from sea level up to 2,800 meters, and you're breathless because it's cold. There's your bag. Just go on down and drag your bag down there. It's called bag drag. Drag your bag down there, get something hot, and then rest a little bit, and then we'll show you your berthing area. All right, so I thought, I did all that. So you go in the dome. This is the geodesic dome. It's gone now. And so up here is what they call the berthing area. And that was because it was Navy, right? So there were like, I think, I don't know, 20 or so little rooms. And over here was the library and the post office in this building. The comms was here. Over here, it's dark, you can't see it. Was like the galley on the first floor and the bar on the second floor. So I got in there and they start divvying up the bags, giving you like a little sled to carry your bag wherever you're going. And they pointed all the guys out to summer camp. And I put my bag and started, they said, oh, no, you can't go out there. You can't go out there and sleep with those guys. You have to take this little dinky room up here that's like not much wider in the walking space, because this is the bunks. Julie, you've been there. This is about the width of those little rooms. Oh, and by the way, you have a roommate. And it ends up, my roommate was the only other woman on station. And she was a general field assistant, very nice person, etc. I thought it was really odd that they would separate us like that. But it was very clear that they didn't even want me walking out in the evening to visit with the field team in summer camp. That's 82. Now, there's one other thing I want you to notice as I go through the slides, and that is how the infrastructure has changed. This was the operation that was brought in by the Polar Ice Coring Office. We'll just call it PICO. So what was it Bruce said? Let's see, you can pay too much, but you don't get enough, or whatever it was. He had some funny saying. You can get better service, but you can't pay more. So that's Bruce Cosey, who's known to most people who've worked in Antarctica. So, but I want you to notice how big this structure is, and the height of that drill tower. And this is the generator, and then a warm-up place, because it's pretty cold. And over here, like a place to work on your widgets and things if you've got equipment to work on. And we were actually processing the core down here under the snow in a trench. So just kind of bear that in mind. Just a little for scale, there's a C-130 flying over that. And this is right out in the runway. So when the planes would come in like this and then go back out to the runway, we were actually kind of in that area between the runway and the station. All right, and this is the three people with me. And so what we were doing back here in the back, the Swiss were working on their electrical conductivity. They're very well known for that, but they were still developing their equipment. This is 1982. The cores are being drilled up on the surface. They're brought down, and then I'm here cutting the core, cutting it longitudinally. Half is going back for other things. A quarter of the core is coming to Ohio State to do the dust. At that time, the only thing we did here in our group was dust, the insoluble particulates. And Pete was going to take the other quarter back to the University of Washington for the stable isotopes. All right, and there were three of us from Ohio State, and part of our task, I was processing core, and my other two team members were digging a 3-meter pit and sampling for dust, isotopes, and density. All right, now, this is Seipel Station. This is the next place the next year. So South Pole for me was fairly uneventful, except that they separated us and we kind of just worked together during the day and we ate together, etc. But somebody here mentioned, one of the talks talked about, the communications 3 times a day. I think it was Rosie. Here, you had at South Pole, we'll go to Seipel in a minute. You had to sign up for a call in which they actually used a ham operator. So you couldn't just call home. On like a Sunday, you'd sign up for a call the next Sunday. And you didn't know when you were going to get your call. It wasn't like you could say to your parents, husband, or whoever that, well, I'm going to call you every Sunday at 2 o'clock, because you might not even raise a ham on Sunday. But it was usually the weekends, because they had better things to do. The comms people had a lot better things to do than to work on patches, so you could say, talk for 5 minutes. So it was really much more isolated than it is today. So let's go to Seipel Station, which is up at the base of the Antarctic Peninsula. And so going there, now here's one of my stories I want to tell. So it was mentioned that, I think Kelly had mentioned the fact that the support, meaning the aircraft, was provided by the Navy. It was very clear the Navy didn't care for women. And this is already 1982. So we're getting on to come up here, and I can't remember, but it's about a 6-hour flight up. And because the weather here's crappy most of the time, you get a turnaround. So we're getting on the plane down at the ice runway, and the loadmaster, who's like God, he runs the plane, and you don't mess with the loadmaster. And he was telling the guys where to pee. There's only a pee place up front, a little funnel, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And he looks over at me and he says, now it's about a 6-hour flight, but if we don't land, we're not even going to be able to make it back. We're going to have to stop at Byrd Surface Camp to refuel, but you can't get off. So lady, you could be looking at 12 hours. And he said, all you can do is light a candle and pray. And frankly, I was pissed off. Literally, because the guys had already been laughing down at the ice runway while we were waiting for the flight. You know, I had this, Bruce Cosi kept saying, you must have the smallest bladder on the planet because or on the ice, because I was constantly going, but I knew I was going to be on that plane for a long time and I wanted to be well drained. So anyway, I was really very aggravated about that. And what happened? The first time out, we couldn't land. Round and round he went, probably wasted an hour or two trying to find a hole in the clouds, couldn't make it, had to come back, stop at Byrd Surface Camp, couldn't get off. It was really bad. So I was mad. So I'm going to tell you about Cycle Station, and then I'll tell you what I did about the fact that there was no head module on that plane. All right, so we get off, and here's Cycle Station. Do you see the station? You don't see it because it's about 20-some or 25, 30 feet under the snow. And in fact, to get in there, let's go up, you have to go down this hatch over here. There's just the sign so you can see this. This station was actually put in to support upper atmospheric physics. It was a big project that Stanford University had. The station I was in was Station 2, all right, because the first one had already been crushed. Those stations only lasted like 7 to 10 years. So now, contrast this to South Pole. You get off, nobody invites you to come down the 30-foot ladder down to the station and have something warm to drink or whatnot. They say, well, let's go get you set up with your accommodations. Well, there's the accommodation. That was it. And we had to they had shovels. And you had to dig your way in. You get in there, there's nothing in there except a big heater. There's the chimney. And bunks. Whoops. And the bunks. Not even as nice as the new summer camp where they had little stalls for you and you had a tad of privacy. So anyway, we're all in there with other people, and my team was 3 and Pico was 3. So there were 6 of us. And so the other 6 or 10 people were no other scientists on station, just the people, well, that's incorrect. Some of the physicists were there. They're scientists too. I actually think they were over here, and we had a lot of like the CAT operators and things with us. Very friendly, really friendly, nice group. And so after a while, you get it dug out and you get yourself situated. And they did build this nice little head module, and you could come in here and have a shower and all that. But there was no separation of the sexes, okay? There were 2 women on station, myself and a woman whose name I've forgotten. She was wonderful. She was a carpenter down there for probably 15 years. And I love talking to her. So because Cycle Station is well known for all of the snow, I mean, it's very, very snowy there. They get about 3 to 5 feet of snow a year. We had to drill under the surface. So they brought the cat out and made a nice ramp and a trench that we covered over with boards, etc. But I want you to notice that drill tower. Do you see how big that drill tower is? Now, notice it's smaller in this dimension than what we saw 2 or 3 years ago at South Pole, but it's still really tall. This is there's our trench, and that's what it looks like after like 2 days. So the cat had to constantly come out and open that up for us. Finally, they got tired of that, and we put in a ladder. So we just used a ladder to get down in there. And here's what, you can't really keep snow out. So this is Bruce Cosi down in the trench drilling. And so that's how we did that. I'm down there cutting we didn't have a saw to cut the core. And all that core was actually going to come back to Ohio State and be sectioned there. So it's just being bagged up. And that's our team from Cycle Station. Some of the old folks like Bruce Cosi, Keith Mountain, some of you know, and John Paskovich were both students here. Thank you. I thought I got 25 minutes. Oh, okay. That's all right. Almost all my funny stories are gone. This is why they had to build a new new cycle station. Do you see here? The ice is actually crushing the station. Yep, and they closed the station 3 years after we left there. So we left there in '85, just because Julie and some others showed the Huskies. I also got to go over to Scott Base and pet the dogs. So now let's go out to Plateau Remote. And that's about 200 miles out here. It's near the old Plateau Station. It's about 200 miles from South Pole. This was where I thought the Navy really showed its ingenuity and how much things had changed. The reason that when I started the talk and I showed you all those different places that we had drilled, at the time, around 1982, almost all the drilling, ice core drilling that was going on, was actually happening at existing stations. It's much easier to support a team at a station. It's much more challenging to support a team at a remote field camp. This was a remote field camp. When we went there, there's nothing there. The two pilots who were actually going to be our pilots actually came to Ohio State. This is 1986. Came to Ohio State to talk with us about how we were going to do this project. I thought that showed a lot of like a very progressive nature. Let's get the scientists involved and what we can work on, do together. Now, those C-130s are very old, they're very expensive, and particularly the nose ski is very, very sensitive. They don't like to land in the open field unless there's a prepared runway. You can't have a prepared runway if you're going to a place that's never been occupied. So we were actually going to land in the true open field. So they came up with the idea that what we would do, of course, is land light, and we would take all of our lumber, all of our fuel, all of our food, things that pretty much can't be broken, and that we would do an airdrop. So we went out here, we flew around, I kind of picked a spot, and they opened up the tailgate, and out it all went, and the chutes open up, and 15 barrels of 55-gallon drums of fuel, only one broke, nothing else broke. And then we went back to South Pole Station. We had initially left from McMurdo, went to South Pole, picked up our luggage and some other things, some of the drill parts you can't drop, and then they landed there, let us out. They couldn't wait to get out of there, but you can't leave us in the field until we've started a fire and we've made radio contact. So we broke into little parties and we were doing all that. So we drilled two 200-meter cores there let's see, that was in 1986. We created a 4,000-year record of various parameters. I'm just showing you the sulfate history for the last 4,000 years and some of the volcanic eruptions that we found. This is a very, very remote place. The atmosphere is very clean. The snow's very clean. So anyway, we did that project. Well, 12 days into it, they had to come out and pick up some ice. So they don't have, there's no cat, there's nothing out there to fork stuff. So the boxes had to be put on just loose load. So they came out, brought us some food, and we're going to pick that up. Came out, but couldn't find us. Couldn't find us. But we were talking to them on the radio. They were up there flying around, and they finally had to give up because they were going to run out of fuel. They went back to South Pole, refuel, went back to McMurdo to kind of think about what they were going to do. And then the next day, they come back out and they find us. You know what the problem was? There was no GPS in this era. This is all inertial navigation. And they set their navigation from McMurdo and dropped us out and went back. But when they came to pick us up, they left from South Pole. They couldn't find it. They had to go back to McMurdo and reset all the navigation to find us. So that was very interesting. So Stacy's going to tell me my time is up. I've got like 30 more slides, but I'm not going to bore you. I'm not going to bore you with that, but I'm going to tell you when I went back, it just happened that Peter Wiltness was had your job at that time. And so he was the director of polar programs. And it just happened also, I was on his advisory committee, and I took him to task about the fact that there was no place on the plane for a woman to go, even to take a leak, unless you wanted to go visit the honeypot. Nobody wants to do that. And so from that, it only took about a year, and they started putting a nice little can up in the back where you could step up, have a little bathroom, have a curtain that you could wrap around so you'd have privacy. And I thought, well, I've achieved something in my life. Taking advantage now that there's a head module on those flights. Appreciate it, because it was really tough. And so I just want to go real fast. I'm not going to show you. You're going to see all this stuff. Ignore it. These are just shots, dive free, all that drill test, all that kind of stuff, laying out the accumulation line at South Pole. I want to get to the very last project, which is coming up right here. This was the Bruce Plateau in 2010. It was part of Larissa. Amy was part of Larissa. Larsen Ice Shelf System, Antarctica. That's our camp. All right, this is the little skiway. We recovered one ice core to about 180 meters. I had a problem, had to start again. When we drilled the second core to bedrock, 448 meters. And I want to show you what kind of infrastructure it took. It was very light. We were staging out of Rothera. The British Antarctic Survey, and the weather up here, this place gets about 10 feet of snow a year. And the people at Rothera were getting sick of us. They couldn't get us out of there. So about midnight one night, the weather cleared on Bruce Plateau, and they used 2 of their twin otters, and then we had a contracted Ken Boric twin otter. And they put a full force thing. Let's just get them out there, get them in. So that was how we got out there. Off in the distance was the Nathaniel B. Palmer, because this was an interdisciplinary project, and they had a helicopter there. So one of their lead people decided they wanted to come up to Bruce Plateau, and they had been waiting to come up. They got a weather window. They got up there, they were there 15 minutes, and they had to leave because the weather was closing in again. It was a very challenging place. This is our drill dome. All the drilling, all the core processing and everything happened under that dome. Here's our little generator shack, much smaller. We had 6 people and 6 tents and a cook tent. And there's our tents. That's what it usually looked like. There's our dome. This is inside the dome. You can see we've got core processing. We've got like our saw for cutting the core. Over here's the drill. There's that's the tower of the drill, and the drill is about that long. 448 meters, a very, very lightweight system. And kind of what allowed us to develop this over the years, and I know Mary, I don't know where Mary is, but I just want to compliment your group, because now you have the resources, and compliment Julie for having the insight and the foresight, really, to come up with something better than PICO. I mean, PICO was okay, and I love the people I worked with, but you get in the field and the drills hadn't been cleaned, they hadn't been serviced. This is because there was not a consistent, there just wasn't consistent attention to that the way your team is now. And plus, you all put all this attention into this, in going lighter weight and being able to meet everybody's needs in different ways. Used to be there was like one drill. If you wanted to drill 100 meters, you still drag that old piece of crap out. And it was the same drill almost that they used at GIST. So a lot's changed. So I just wanted to show you how light it can be done. And so these are the cores coming out. You can see we drilled a pretty nice core, and we have bubbles that people are interested in, etc. And there's OHIO.